They rented a house in the most expensive neighbourhood. Stephen was earning £60,000 a year as a computer technician. He gave Evelyn a monthly allowance of £1,000.
Nothing was too good for her. In fact, I'd tell him that his wife was lazy after she had the children because she'd lie in bed all day and the maids would take care of the children.
Yeah, Stephen employed maids to do the housework.
And she wouldn't physically do anything. And he'd just say, she doesn't have to do anything, Mum. She's my princess.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
She wasn't the same. She seemed to have this air of being rich, and she would always speak of money and in a way would look down on her relatives.
It wasn't just Evelyn's life that was transformed. Life on the island changed dramatically for her parents too. Stephen was sending them large amounts of money, enough to buy a fishing boat and to build the only brick house in the village. He paid their fares to visit him and Evelyn in their new home. Sometimes they stayed for several weeks.
When they'd gone, pillows would have gone missing, or light bulbs,
fittings and...
or the rice maker, anything they could come and carry away.
A water filter, that went missing.
Yeah, and Evelyn would feel it was okay, because she'd just say to Stephen, we go buy some more.
Margaret and Alan also visited at least once a year. They always took their video camera, and they noticed their daughter-in-law was acting suspiciously.
Whenever you saw her, she was text messaging, communicating with someone. When she thought you was out of earshot, you could hear a giggle and a laugh. You said it was a boyfriend, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Just by her whole attitude towards us and towards Stephen. She was very angry at Stephen all the time by this time.
Sue, come over here, dude. Go that way, that way.
Margaret and Alan weren't the only ones who suspected Evelyn was having an affair. Her sister, Gina, had moved into work as a nanny to the children. She confronted Evelyn about the rumours.
She finally admitted that it was true, that she did have a lover, and she told me that Steve and her were having problems.
The man in question was a local security guard, earning only £1,000 a year. That was the same as Evelyn's monthly allowance. His name was Arnold Adorai.
Were you having an affair with Arnold?
No, I'm not having an affair with him. That's I don't know. Why did he think me that way?
1, 2, 3.
Hello. Zoom in, pal.
Your hands upon your knee. Wave them high up in the sky.
Stephen was becoming increasingly suspicious about his wife's behaviour.
Clap your hands.
Money was going missing. He'd given Evelyn the fees for Jessica to go to a private nursery school. One day, he decided to take his daughter there himself.
He was really embarrassed because Jessie wasn't even enrolled. And there he is taking this little girl to school with a packed lunch. And they didn't even know who she was. And the last thing he said to me was, she's really messed up this time, Mum, she's pawned a wedding ring. It's only in hindsight of the events, what happened, that she was actually buying things for her boyfriend. We did find out that the rent money bought him a motorbike.
Stephen, too, started to spend time away from his family with his single friends. They went out to the bars and clubs he used to go to before he was married.
I don't think Steve had an affair. I think he had one-night stands now and then. As I said, they didn't have a sexual relation whatsoever, so I think Steve would go elsewhere to satisfy that need.
Stephen told Evelyn he was away on business. In fact, he was staying at Mike's house, where they brought girls back to party. This was the last home video Stephen recorded, weeks before his murder.
Well, it looks like someone's broke it.
No, never used it until...
Stephen still wanted his marriage to work.
Last time I used it...
He gave Evelyn an ultimatum. She had to give the missing money back and get a job or go to college. But nothing changed, so he threatened her with divorce.
She was faced with going back to being a prostitute in a bar. She would be exactly back where she was 5 years before, selling herself to strangers or living in poverty back in her province after having been the queen.
Stephen decided to stop Evelyn's allowance. Now, she was no longer able to support the large network of family and friends that had come to depend on her.
I do remember telling him that he needs to be careful. Some of these people are crazy. And he made a comment, I'll never forget, he made a comment about, that they wouldn't hurt him because he's the golden goose, you see? And I remember telling him that you forget the moral of the story is that they killed the golden goose. And I think we just kind of laughed it off and had another beer.
Margaret and Alan will always remember their last holiday with Stephen and his family.
My anger with Evelyn, she let me say goodbye to Stephen that day.
Knowing that we wouldn't see him again. It was the way the goodbyes were. It wasn't like it'd been in the past. It was a final goodbye. She was there.
She knew.
She knew. And she let him smile at us and hug us and say goodbye to us. She knew.
On July the 18th, 2002, Margaret got the news that every mother dreads.
That particular morning, Alan and I were here on our own, and Alan was doing the garden. And then I got a telephone call from Mike. It was like I'd heard it, and if I didn't say it, it wasn't true.
And I just kept saying to Margaret, it can't be. He can't be dead. Not Stephen.
That night, Stephen and Mike had been staying in Manila at their business apartment. Mike woke up when 3 men broke in. One held a gun to his head and said, "Is this him?" When he was told no, he went into the room where Stephen was sleeping.
At that point, I heard a yell and 3 or 4 shots. They were simultaneous. It was Steve's yell. He was yelling, "Hey," or something along those lines, but at the same time, there was these shots. Then I heard a running down the stairs. I went to Steve's room, saw him lying there. I felt for a pulse. There was none. So I just went downstairs and went to the neighbors and called the police. And then I just said aloud to one of the neighbors, in fact, I just turned and said, "That fucking bitch killed him." And I meant Evelyn.
There was no evidence to link it to Evelyn. It was just pure suspicion. When I said to Mike, it was just a gut reaction. Has it got anything to do with Evelyn?
I couldn't see it. I know she was arrogant and ignorant and all the other things we'd learned her to be. But a murderer, I couldn't see it.
As soon as Margaret learnt of her son Stephen's murder, she flew to the Philippines. At the funeral parlour, she thought his widow, Evelyn, was acting suspiciously.
Evelyn was sat to the left as we walked in, and she didn't get up. And we went over to Stephen's coffin. Evelyn never came to us.
Did she seem upset?
No.
Not at all.
No.
Not at all.
Never saw a tear from that girl's eyes at all.
Never, ever.
That time I saw my husband, he was just sleeping. His hair is just like, you know, like that. And it's all flat here and it's very dark. I was, you know, nothing I can do with it.
And I got her to come over and we stood over Stephen. And she said to me, have you seen Mike? This is before we addressed that Stephen was lying there dead in front of us. Have you seen Mike? So I said, no, I've not seen anybody. And she said, well, if the guys were in the room for 20 minutes, surely he would recognise them. Mm-hmm. And she was just trying to pump me about Mike. And that's when my notebook came out. And everything, every interaction we had, I made notes.
The police investigation was moving very slowly. Their first theory was that someone connected with Stephen's company might have killed him.
We started at their office, which is a few blocks away from their rented apartment. But all the employees are claiming that the victim is a very good employer. They don't think of anybody who would do that to him. They're really facing a blank wall then.
Margaret took things into her own hands. She wasn't going to return to the UK until she had got to the truth about Stephen's murder. She hired her own private investigator, a former policeman who doesn't want to be identified.
She's crying and give me a hug. She's crying on my shoulder and telling me, oh, please help my son's case to be solved.
Margaret's investigator carried out 24-hour surveillance on Evelyn. There were two men who paid regular visits to her home. One was Evelyn's lover. The other, his friend, another security man. Margaret passed this on to the police, who called both men in. Mike was able to identify them as two of the three men who broke into his flat on the night of the murder.
At one point, he looked towards me, and I saw his eyes. And those are the same eyes that were, you know, going to gun me down. I was 100% certain.
They were both arrested. But Margaret's campaign to hunt down Stephen's killers was putting her and Alan's lives at risk. She was warned that they were in danger. Friends of the accused knew who they were. After 2 months, it was time to go home. But Margaret wasn't going to leave the Philippines without something of Stephen's. His children. She wanted to take Jessica and Joshua home to live with her and Alan.
Why did you decide that it was the right thing to take them away from their mother?
Because she was dangerous. She didn't care.
Coffee.
Is your coffee, Jessie's coffee?
Margaret persuaded Evelyn to let Jessica stay with her for the weekend. A few days later, she left the Philippines for England with her 3-year-old granddaughter. She hadn't been able to find her grandson.
I didn't want to leave Joshua. It was the hardest thing I did, is to leave the baby there without taking him. So we left the passport for Joshua and we had to get on the plane with Jess. And by this time I'd got halfway down my list because I'd got Jessica, I got the passports, I got Stephen's ashes in my hand luggage. We got 2 guys in jail.